Welcome back, everyone. With all of the fascinating and complex studies on the Quran these days, it's important to keep the nature of the book itself in perspective. It's a book written, compiled, and edited by people. These people made mistakes. Some of these mistakes demonstrate a shocking amount of ignorance. Such ignorance is perhaps most on display when the Quran repeatedly says it affirms books that it demonstrably contradicts. This leaves Muslims in the very odd position of having to claim the corruption of the Torah and Gospel. In doing so, they deny what their own Quran says so that they can continue believing that the Quran is the divine word of Allah. In fact, in contemplating how the Quran claims to confirm books that it contradicts, one finds within the Quran much contradiction, which, according to something I read somewhere, indicates that it's not from God. This fundamental, glaring, persistent problem is expounded with great clarity by the 9th century Christian apologist known as Al-Kindi. What about this topic, you may ask, was said in the 9th century that's still relevant today? Well, all of it. As we go through what Al-Kindi wrote, you'll notice that everything he says can be said to the vast majority of Muslims today, without alteration or adaptation. This speaks to the almost universal stagnation of Muslim apologetics on this issue that should, in all honesty, be a universal embarrassment. In a recent essay, Murad Takawi gives us an excerpt from Al-Kindi's 9th century exposition of the Christian faith. Al-Kindi introduces the topic. It seems to me that you have referred to the issue of falsification in this regard, that we Christians have displaced the words from their context, and that we have altered the book and changed it. You have sought refuge in this allegation and turned it into a cavern in which you seek shelter. I pity you for this excessive and overpowering folly, whose consequences can be dire. For I have never heard an argument that is as deficient and as easily invalidated as yours regarding the issue of falsification and alteration. I am truly surprised that you, and learned people like you, can be deceived by such claims. As he continues, notice the enduring relevance of what he says. Nevertheless, given that you are the one charging the allegation of falsification and alteration, I extend to you an invitation that would do justice to us both. If you are indeed earnest, bring forth this unfalsified and unaltered book, whose veracity is confirmed by the marvelous signs, in the same way that the miracles performed by the prophets and the disciples testify to the veracity of this book, a testimony we have accepted from them. Verily, the same book is in our hands, and in the hands of the Jews, with neither addition nor subtraction. However, I am certain that you are incapable of procuring this unfalsified and unaltered book, that I may receive it from you. In part, Al-Kindi at least seems to be echoing a frequent Quran challenge. Bring your proof. And he says that his Muslim challengers will not be able to. Many centuries later, he's still correct. Al-Kindi's major points so far. The tampering allegation is foolish. The Jewish and Christian scriptures are confirmed with miracles. Muslims cannot bring their proof of tampering claims. Next, Al-Kindi brings our attention to this massive contradiction. How then can you charge these allegations while your book, the Quran, gives the ultimate testimony to the veracity of what we Christians hold in our hands? For it declares, if you are in doubt about what we have sent down to you, ask those who have been reciting the book before you. The truth has come to you from your Lord, so do not be one of the doubters. He then quotes Surah 2, 121 as well, and continues, Comprehend, therefore, how your book testifies to the validity of our recitation. Indeed, it commands him, referring to Muhammad, to ask us about our book, and to accept all what we say to him. How then can you claim that we have falsified and altered the words from their context? Are these propositions, therefore, not contradictory? Is the contradiction not apparent to everyone? He's raised at least two more important points. Let's summarize them. The Quran commands Muhammad to be instructed by Jews and Christians about their books, and Muslim allegations of falsification contradict the Quran because the Quran affirms the veracity of the Jewish and Christian scriptures. We need to emphasize that last point. Al-Kindi quoted Surah 1094, which reads, If you are in doubt about what we have sent down to you, ask those who have been reciting the book before you. The truth has come to you from your Lord, so do not be one of the doubters. This is one of the many verses where the Quran affirms the authority of the scriptures of the Jews and Christians, and will use it as a stereotypical example. Unfortunately, in an attempt to make an effective point about something so deeply embedded in the Muslim mind, we have to resort to a simple diagram. In numerous verses, the Quran confirms the scriptures of the Jews and Christians. But when was the Quran written? It doesn't matter for our purposes in this video specifically, but given the target audience, let's assume the 7th century. This will make Muslim traditionalists happy, as well as some Western academics who exhibit a bizarre, unwavering loyalty to the traditional account. So, in the 7th, 8th century, or whenever, the Quran affirms the scriptures of the Jews and the Christians. Whatever the actual dates, both before and after that time, we can confirm with complete certainty from numerous manuscripts in numerous geographical areas that the scriptures at the time of the Quran are in complete agreement or continuity with the scriptures we have today. There is zero doubt about this, in both a general sense and certainly with the parts of Scripture, few they may be, that the Quran appears familiar with. So does it do any good to say that the Bible the Quran is referring to no longer exists? No, that would be foolish. Does it do any good to claim the Bible was changed? No, that would be foolish. Does it do any good to promote conspiracy theories about the Emperor Constantine? No, that would be foolish. Does it do any good to promote conspiracy theories about Paul? No, that would be foolish. Does it do any good to claim that the Quran refers to a different Torah and Gospel? No, that would also be foolish. Torah and Gospel were standard terms long before the Quran. So if the Quran meant something different by those very same terms, then the author of the Quran should have said so, thus avoiding much contradiction. Yet we hear these pathetic apologetics all the time, don't we, Muslims? Let's get back to Al-Kindi, who's worth quoting at length. Pay close attention to what he says. Do your own reason justice, and seek to please God as reasonable people ought to do, and adjudicate who is the one falsifying and altering. Is it us, the Christians? We who received the book from the people who attested to its veracity by bringing forth divine signs and marvels that are beyond human capabilities, and whose veracity is further confirmed by the concurrency of the nations with their different languages, predispositions, religions, and in different remote places, who are virtually incapable of plotting a conspiracy? Or is it the one who accepts a book with no evidence, no proof, and no testimony from a prophet, and without even the mention of a marvel that testifies to its veracity, but only accepts it from a person who transmits it in his and his people's own tongue, using it as proof of its veracity? Indeed, he, your master, referring to Muhammad, claims that the book is on par with the splitting of the sea, resurrecting the dead and curing the blind, the leper, and the cripple. He took this book from a people consumed by malevolence and violence, with each one adding or taking away from it, and having the audacity to attribute it to God, blessed and exalted. He claimed that it is a proof of the veracity of its prophet's prophethood, and that it is a just witness to him as the messenger of the Lord Almighty. However, not content with this, he went on further saying, the one who fails to accept my book, to recognize that it is revealed from God, and to accept that I am a messenger prophet, this person I will kill, claim his money, take captive his children, and defile his women. This is how this book was accepted, out of dread and fear from the threat of such affliction and suffering, with neither argument nor proof. Therefore I implore you, may God enrich you, to use your perceptive and discerning reason on this matter. To add to his previous points, Al-Kindi asserts that the Quran comes from malevolent and violent people who altered it, and Muhammad compelled acceptance of the Quran through violence. Let's summarize Al-Kindi's points. The tampering allegation is foolish. The Jewish and Christian scriptures are confirmed with miracles. Muslims cannot bring their proof of tampering claims. The Quran commands Muhammad to be instructed by Jews and Christians about their books. Muslim allegations of falsification contradict the Quran because the Quran affirms the veracity of the Jewish and Christian scriptures. The Quran comes from malevolent and violent people who altered it, and Muhammad compelled acceptance of the Quran through violence. Even back in the 9th century, it was past time for Muslims to come out of the cave they had retreated to with this argument. In our modern day, it's long overdue, to say the least. For Muslims slowly walking to the mouth of the cave, gaining courage to peek out at the light, I'll close with Al-Kindi's words. I implore you, may God enrich you, to use your perceptive and discerning reason on this matter. For those of you who choose to stay in the cave, watch out for a demon posing as Gabriel, and spare us your echo chamber responses in the comments section. We've all had enough of your tired, old, worn-out talking points that haven't been updated since about the 9th century. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.